Superb. So today we're going to be talking about a recession marketing playbook. Okay. Um, I'm going to give you some digital marketing based observations about where it looks like we're headed. Lots of talk about recessions and economic downturns and stuff like this. I'm going to give you some observations from where we sit about where it looks like we're headed. Going to give you some suggested tools that you can use to kind of control your own mindset during this time. I think it's really important as marketers that we're able to take a very sort of calm and logical approach to everything that's going on. While all about us are losing our heads, we need to be totally keeping our heads. And then we're going to go through a couple of exercises that you can play with your business to ready it for whatever is coming. I'm going to give some examples dotted throughout about clients that we've worked with, some different examples that you can take and apply to your own business. And I'd encourage you, we'll rush through these examples fairly quick. I'm going to be showing you where to find the answers. That's going to be the theme of a lot of today. I'm going to be showing you where to find the answers, whether or not you actually find the answers right here, because some of these things, they might be a 3-hour brainstorming session that you do with a pen and a paper or with your leadership team or whatever. So I'm going to give you the tools that you can use to find the answers, and then feel free to play with them. Great. 2:03 a.m. in California right now. So I don't know if you've woken up super early, if you're staying up super late, but either way, respect to you. Okay, great. So, by the way, if you don't know me, my name's Tim. I am head ninja at Exposure Ninja. We're a digital marketing agency. We've worked with thousands of businesses over the last, we must be almost 10 years old, which makes me feel super old. And we get to see behind the scenes of a lot of businesses, which is quite interesting, and it's quite useful in times like this, because we get to sort of see indicators and see how things are affecting different businesses and different industries at various different times. Cool. Let's get stuck in then. How do I make the screen bigger? There we go. Boom. Look at this technical genius. Will this be recorded, Ivan? Yes, it will. It will indeed. Cool. Where's my little things? Oh, it's chaos. You can tell I haven't done one of these for a year. All right. Now, I don't know about you, but at the end of a long day of work or at the end of a long week of work, I like to sometimes just sit down and chill out and flick through the news to find out what's going on in the world. And it hasn't been the happiest of reading lately. See if your keyword research brain can spot the trend in some of these news articles. This is the media clearly deciding that we are very much headed into a recession if we are not already there. Now, it's worth noting, of course, that a recession is usually defined as like 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth. And I don't think, as far as I know, we're not technically, no one has declared that we are actually in a recession yet in most of the world's major economies. Nevertheless, a study from bankrate.com found that Americans are already suffering from recession fatigue. So before it's even been declared, we as a whole and our American friends are suffering from recession fatigue. We're already fed up with this. So it's very clear that the media has decided, and I think justifiably so, that we are in a recession or we are headed towards a recession, which of course brings lots of stresses with it. Now, of course, the media saying stuff is one thing. There's other indicators that we can use to understand how the economy is doing. This is UK data. This is company insolvencies. It's measured on a quarterly basis. So you'll see on the chart at the bottom, we've got up to 2022 Q2 data. We don't have Q3 data yet. It will be coming out at some point, but it takes them a little while to compile all of this. And what it's showing is that the number of company insolvencies has obviously taken a big increase. Now, one of my sort of pastimes, it makes me sound a little bit sick to say that, but one of my pastimes is I get a lot of notifications of business insolvencies, and I'm always looking through for opportunities to see what assets Exposure Ninja could buy or play with. And one of the things I've noticed is since the midsummer, the size of the businesses that are going insolvent, the size of the businesses that are being liquidated has significantly increased. So whereas previously it was like smaller businesses that had some sort of minor economic shock, a client had stopped paying or, they couldn't afford their COVID loan because business didn't tick up after the COVID or whatever. Whereas now it's much larger companies, and it seems to be a lot of a lot of businesses have taken out huge amounts of debt during coronavirus when debt was very cheap. 50% of all SME debt in the UK is, variable rate. So those interest rates have already come up. The debt repayments have already come up at the same time as the customers are facing this cost of living squeeze, as we'll talk about later. And absolutely savage impact on businesses. Really, really is absolutely awful impact on businesses. It's a really difficult time. So I think that when that Q3 data comes out, and of course that's when things like the increase in fuel costs will really start filtering through the economy. That's when we'll really start to see things kind of, I don't want to say explode, but it's going to be a bit of a meltdown, isn't there? One of my favorite tools, I think one of humankind's greatest inventions is Google Trends. And Google Trends is a really useful way of understanding where sort of popular psychology, sort of popular opinion is at. And it's been a pretty good predictor of times of recession. If we have a look at Google Trends data for the word recession, here we're looking at UK data, but it's the same around the world. We can see that the Great Recession, 2007, 2009, was very evident in Google Trends data. We had global financial crisis, most severe recession since the 1930s. Banks had to be bailed out. We came close to a complete financial system ruin. And you can see that in the data. You can see that spike in search volume. Of course, you can see a big spike in 2020 as well, as we had a COVID pandemic, lockdown-induced recession. Entire sections of the economy were shut down, completely unparalleled situation. And you can see that spike showing in 2020. Now, quick survey. Does anybody hazard a guess about where today's data is? No cheating. No one heading over to Google Trends. I'm going to show you in a second anyway. But does anybody hazard a guess? Do we think that today's interest is going to be higher or lower than these awful, awful times previously? Roland says 600. Well, the scale is only up to 100, Roland. I think you've actually sussed it though, because the maximum reading on the chart is always 100. Today's people are, this is huge, right? This is public perception is obviously only one piece of the pie, but given that recession can be a self-fulfilling prophecy, if we all feel like we're in a recession and we tighten our belts, lo and behold, we increase the chances of recession kicking in. So yes, higher, everyone's saying, yeah, higher, it's 100. Anyone who said less than 100, sorry. Yeah, absolutely brutal. So, sad times. Now, all of this can be quite overwhelming, I guess, as business owners, as marketing leaders, as marketers. We've got a whole bunch of different stuff going on in our heads. What's going to happen in our market, right? Usually in recessions, some businesses survive, some businesses limp along, some businesses are damaged, and many will fail. That's just the reality of recessions. It's not nice for any business to go bust. You wouldn't wish it on anyone. You might wish it on some of your competitors, but only in obviously it's not a nice time. You might also be wondering about where is consumer or business spending going to go? Many commentators have been declaring an end of loose monetary policy. For people of my generation, we don't know any other time other than low interest rates, easy access to credit. So if that is being taken away, that's a huge shock to the system. And it's going to have an impact on spending habits. It's going to have an impact on our sort of optimism about the future, which of course is going to filter into the economy. Then we've got cost of living crisis, all fuel crisis and stuff. Now, I don't want to make this endlessly bleak. Don't worry. This is the last bleak slide, and then it's all positivity and how we're going to adapt to this. But I think it's really important that we understand the narratives that are going on. You may also be worried about your personal circumstances. You've got mortgage payments, especially if you're coming up for a remortgage at some point in the next couple of years. You might have loans. You might have debt interest on those loans. You might be worried about job security. This is a really brutal time. For me, one of the scariest parts of a roller coaster is when you've just gone up that big, the big first hill and you're at the crest and you can't yet see what the dip is going to look like. That for me is the scariest time, especially when you just start to feel that you're going over. And this is also the place that we're at financially with the economy today, right? We're on the crest of it. Some businesses are starting to notice it. They've started to go over the crest, but we don't actually know how big or significant this is. Now, as I said at the start, I actually think it's worth us spending a little bit of time addressing our own mindsets and making sure that we are primed to respond in the most effective way. So I've put this bit here for a reason. I think it's really important that we get to grips with our own sort of recession mindset. If that's what we're going to be heading into, we need to make sure that we are tuned, we are calm, we're able to respond logically. What we don't want is for us to be carried along by the fear and by the narratives and all of this stuff. Whilst we might be sort of feeling that, we need a way of controlling those emotions so that we're able to respond in a logical and strategic way. So here's my suggested guide to a recession mindset. Here's how I think about recession or tough times to help me sleep at night. And even, I'm going to say this because I'm amongst people that hopefully understand my personality, even feel slightly excited about the roller coaster that will unfold. Okay, now I don't want people to take that the wrong way. I'm going to talk through, obviously, but the first thing to think about, the first sort of principle to condition into ourselves, that this is happening to everyone. So this is not one of those unforced errors. You haven't done anything wrong to find yourself in this position. You haven't made a mistake. Rush has just asked, do you think people focus more on food products? Rush, will come back to that in a minute. That is a great question. This is something that you and your competitors, everyone is going into this in the same sort of situation. So everyone is in the same boat. Now you can take comfort from that, but that is also where things start to get a little bit interesting, and the optimist, aggressive people out there will look at this situation as great. The rules of the game have changed. Whoever adapts to those and whoever's able to make the most of this situation will win. This doesn't have to be all bad news forever. This could be the makings of something interesting, because this is happening to everyone. This is a sort of a universal experience. The next thing is, nothing lasts forever, and recessions are no exception. No recession has ever lasted forever. At least there's that. No growth time has lasted forever. If you look at economic conditions over time, it's basically a sort of sine wave with, it's slightly less regular than a sine wave. It's a lot less regular than a sine wave, but it's up and down, it's up and down, it's up and down. This is a cycle. This is just naturally what happens because us imperfect, emotional, illogical humans are in charge of the economy. We make selfish, irrational decisions which are based on our own self-interest rather than the greater good. So we cause these things over time, we as a collective, not individuals. So this will not last forever. The third thing, and this is where some people can get really offended by this, but recessions can be a time of unparalleled opportunity. Now, I'm not for a second diminishing the fact that some people have a really tough time in recessions. A lot of people have a really tough time in a recession. There is a direct correlation between suicide rates and depression and recessions. Let's not for a second diminish that at all. I'm not saying that this is going to be great. This is awesome. This is so fun. Not saying that at all. Regardless, over the next few years, most businesses will see a change in the guard to some extent in their market. Some of their competitors will adapt and thrive. Some of their competitors will stay in denial or fail to adapt. Some will die. We saw this in COVID, right? We saw how different businesses respond in different ways, and it creates this sort of changing of the guard. I think of it, like those little snow globes, right? Where they've got all the snow settled and then you shake it up and it's all mixed up. That's what a recession is. It's a changing of the rules. And then it's whoever is most adaptable, whoever looks at that new situation and is able to adapt to it, those are the people who control where those little bits of snow fall. So we have to respond to this. The fourth thing, mentality is key. Mentality is key. How do I explain this? So, okay, let me give you an illustration. When I read the FT every day, right, Financial Times, it's one of my favorite things in the entire world. And I've noticed that I can completely shift my experience of reading that newspaper. I actually have it delivered to my house. A physical newspaper gets delivered to my house every day. That's wild, right? Absolutely wild. One of the benefits of living inside the M25. And I've noticed that my mindset, my mentality is absolutely key here. If I open that paper with the mindset of, Where are the opportunities? There are loads of opportunities. Where are the opportunities? If I open that paper, what do I see? I see hundreds of opportunities. There's opportunities on every single page. There's disruption going on. There is new technology. There are new problems for mankind that need to be solved. I see opportunities everywhere. Now, if I'm having a tough day, or if I've had a tough week or whatever, and my mindset is the world is falling apart, I open that newspaper and what do I see? I see evidence that the world is falling apart. What looked like disruption, creating opportunity when I was feeling positive, now looks like, people are losing their jobs, businesses are going bust, technology is ruining things for people. What used to look like new technology, new advances, this is going to cause massive shifts, it's causing geopolitical issues, chip fighting, right? Where I see new problems that need to be solved. We need to solve climate change as a collective. I see, the world is falling apart. So same paper, same information, same situations, because I've gone into a completely different mindset. My experience is totally different. I've gone from spotting opportunities to spotting horrific evidence that the world is falling apart in every single area. And it's all based on my mindset. Now, I'm not going woo-woo. I'm not talking about like law of attraction and The Secret and stuff. Most of the time, that stuff is just selling silver bullets to lazy people. I'm not talking about that at all. Our mindset as marketers, though, is absolutely fundamental to the results that we generate for our companies over the next few years. So we must retain control of our mindset and be aware of how our own thoughts impact what we experience and where we look, okay? So that being said, we've got some people saying that they appreciate this. Good. That being said, let's look at the 3 ways that businesses respond in a downturn, okay? And when we're looking at these, I really want you to think about what is your natural tendency? How is your natural tendency? And what do you think is optimal, okay? So the first way that businesses respond in a downturn, we saw all of this in COVID, is retreat. So retreat mode is, in many cases, people's sort of default position in any time of fear or shock, right? Now, no 2 downturns are alike. That's an important thing. No 2 downturns are alike. This one will have some different trigger points. It'll have some different symptoms to previous downturns. But all downturns do share a pattern. And the pattern is basically this. Firstly, there was a drop in confidence, drop in consumer confidence. This drop in consumer confidence, whether it's caused by cost of living, whether it's caused by interest rates, whether it's caused by, currency devaluation, whatever the cause in the drop of confidence, this leads to consumers spending less. Okay, consumers tighten their belts. They think more carefully about purchases as they have less disposable income. Now, what's the knock-on from that? Well, the knock-on from that is that they're spending less with businesses, right? So businesses start to see less revenue. Unemployment might go up as businesses start cutting staff. Credit becomes more difficult to obtain, so there's less cash floating around the system. And businesses typically start to panic, okay? Because businesses are just made up of people, and maybe our natural response is to panic. So what do businesses do when they start panicking? They're seeing less revenue come in. They react by pulling back. They pull back, they slash everything. They reduce investment across the board. That new division, that new service that they were going to launch, now it suddenly feels too risky. Let's not do that. That new bunch of people that they were going to buy, or that new territory that they were going to expand into, probably not a good time to do that just before a recession. Let's pull back. Marketing investment also often gets lumped in this category. Well, we were going to pursue expansion. It feels a little bit risky at the moment. Now, of course, this might seem logical. Someone says, am I mining Bitcoin in the background? I'm definitely not mining Bitcoin. Whilst this pulling back in investment might seem logical, actually, you can see how it's, in some cases, not logical at all. You can see the problem with this, particularly with things like marketing investment, where you probably want to pull back in some areas, but you don't want to pull back across the board, because what will happen is reducing our efforts and our attention on marketing means we're reducing exposure and influence over our markets, meaning we attract less spending, we speed up this cycle. So whilst it can seem like a logical move to just pull back across the board in the entire business, sometimes that really isn't the way to go. Angry Badger says, get aggressive and grab the limited cash available from the reduced customers. An interesting perspective. I think we'll come back to that in just a second. So that is option 1. That is a sort of default response for many people, is just to retreat, to pull back, this doesn't feel like a good time. Let's just play it safe. Let's see how this plays out. Now, the other response, the other most common response, is this sort of head in the sand. I refuse to participate in this downturn. Now, I'm not mocking this approach, slightly mocking this approach. There's a famous quote, though, by Sam Walton, who Walmart fame, a greater business person than I will ever be. And someone asked him, I'm going to butcher the quote, but it's something like, what have you thought about the recession? And he said, I've thought about it and I refuse to participate. Well, that is all well and good for Sam Walton and Walmart, because Walmart is very well positioned in a recession, so he can refuse to participate. That's okay to an extent. Although I have no doubt that there are other people in Walmart who are definitely thinking about how to mitigate and how to stress test a business for recession times. The trouble with this approach, and the trouble with an organization taking this approach, is you might well refuse to participate in the downturn, but if your customers are well and truly bought in, you'll find that the marketing messages that used to work just don't resonate as well. They're just not hitting like they used to. They might even seem trite. They might even produce anger, right? Let's say that you're Rolex, and you're in charge of Rolex's out-of-home advertising, and you've got a big Rolex billboard outside a line for a food bank. Well, that's not going to go well. The best response that you can expect in that situation is no response at all. At worst, you're going to get graffiti, you're going to get anger. It's going to make anger, it's going to build anger, right? So we have to be conscious that our customers, even if we're deciding to bury our heads in the sand, our customers are experiencing in very real terms a recession. So on the plus side, yes, you can increase growth to your competitors by just all levers, pull back, slam this thing to the wall. On the downside, you might still be vulnerable to areas outside your control. So we don't want to go into full retreat mode. We might short-term improve our margins by reducing spending in some areas, but we'll be doing so by choking our own future pipelines and growth. We don't also want to completely bury our heads in the sand and keep plowing on regardless without making any changes. We need to be sensitive to what's going on around us. So the question is, how do businesses that thrive through a recession do it? Okay. For clients, very, very good point. It's not the essential businesses such as Walmart, it's the luxury businesses that need to face the downturn. You're exactly right. Now, the short answer is the businesses that succeed in a recession, the businesses that market themselves out of a recession to an extent, are those that take a third approach. Now, here's an article it's a research paper from Harvard Business Review, published during the last recession, 2007, 2009 one. And this paper found that cutting marketing activity too dramatically was actually counterproductive. Now, they're looking at huge brands like Domino's and Pizza Hut and McDonald's and stuff like this. But the data, the information is exactly the same for businesses of all sizes. Now, some people have mentioned ad costs are going to go down in a recession. Absolutely. Don't forget that most digital marketing, is a zero-sum game, which means that if your competitors are slashing their costs, well, that means your space is going to be less competitive. If we think about Google Ads, for example, that is a zero-sum game. There are 4 spots above the fold on Google Ads. If competitors are reducing their budgets, well, that makes it cheaper to get those spots. SEO, there are only 10 organic results on the first page of Google. If you're gaining ranking, that means someone else is losing. So if your competitors are pulling back, well, that makes it easier for you. Social media, everyone's newsfeed is a finite space. So those ads are based on a bidding system. Who's willing to bid the most for that impression? Well, if your competitors are pulling back, you can accelerate into this. So you might be able to pick up customers more cheaply, precisely because your competitors have pulled back. Now, that's not to say businesses should just press on with their marketing spend indiscriminately. And in fact, that HBR article, the research recommended cutting back on marketing in some areas using a scalpel rather than a cleaver. But check this out. This is Google search CPC data from the last recession. This is from Total Retail. Really, really interesting. So just to recap on some timings, 2 years was a long time ago, right? March was when most spaces started to lock down, okay? So that's when we see that big drop in CPC. So what we're looking here at CPC benchmarks. So Google Ads. This is an auction system. The more people are willing to spend on their ads, the higher the higher the CPCs get pushed up. So the higher this graph is, basically the more competitive Google Ads is. So what did we see here? Well, we saw as soon as lockdowns came, people started pulling their Google ad budget. Right? Just pulling it almost indiscriminately. And we were experiencing this in Exposure Ninja. We lost 43% of our clients in about a month and a half, right? This is businesses just going, whoa, this is massive. Stop marketing, panic, hit the big button. And then what happens? Over time, people gradually realize, actually, do you know what? This digital marketing thing, this might actually be the way out of this. And before you know it, CPCs have recovered. Now, think about those advertisers who in the early days were like, we're not going to pull back in this channel because actually this channel is working for us. This channel is profitable for us at 72 cents. Well, what happens to that channel when the cost goes down to 50 cents? You've just reduced your customer acquisition cost by a third. Sick. That completely changes the profitability of that channel. And we were in this game as well. We were having these conversations with clients. We helped some clients pivot their offerings. We noticed that others were positioned to do really well and just needed to crank up the dials, because remember, Google Ads is basically a zero-sum game. And the same is true for most digital channels. Businesses may be tempted to take their foot off the gas with SEO or social media if they notice a downturn, but their competitors are doing exactly the same thing. So this can reduce competition. There's a Warren Buffett quote. Does anybody know it? Be fearful when others are greedy. Be greedy when others are fearful. Now, it's one of those things, it's like a little quote that you're like, yeah, that's great, that's right. It's really scary to do that, to be greedy in the early days of the COVID pandemic when this was completely unprecedented, no one knew what was going to happen. That takes some guts to do, right? So it's one of those things that's nice to say. It's another to, in Warren Buffett's case, invest hard when everyone else is leaving a space. They're like, this is dead, there's nothing here, he's going to invest hard. So, but this is the mindset that we have to cultivate selectively with our marketing. We have to be ready to be greedy when others are being fearful. And in times of economic downturn is basically a collective time of fear. So what we're talking about here is taking a slightly different course. So we're not head in the sand. We're not total pullback. We're being careful and clever and strategic with this. So here are the two things, and then there's another thing after, which you are going to want to do if you want to make the most of this next period. The first is committing to a rational analysis of marketing opportunities. Rational analysis of marketing opportunities, always being tuned to this. A couple of places that you're going to do this. Firstly, looking at customer behavior. So you might want to relentlessly analyze how search volumes are changing in your market. What are people searching for more of? What are they searching for less of? And how is that changing over the months? Because you can then align your positioning, you can align your messaging with that. You might also want to look at how search intent is changing. Are people, let's say your e-commerce, are people searching for more price-driven searches? Are people searching for, smart water bottle free delivery or best value water bottles more than they used to be? So how is your customer intent changing? This is all the sort of stuff that we do for clients, obviously. You might also want to check out your competitor activity. So are your competitors pulling back? Are you noticing CPCs in your space decrease? Are you sticking your competitors in SEMrush every month to see what they're spending on ads? Are they pulling back? And if they're pulling back, is that a smart move, or are they just responding from fear? Because if you think they're just responding from fear, that might be an indication to you that you're going to push in. How often are they posting on their website? Is their blog, is it just starting to dry up, right? They used to do 3 posts a week, now they're going to 2, and then they're going to 1. Are they starting to pull back? What's going on with their organic social? Are they still doing anything, or are they pulling back? That can give you an indication as to how your competitors are thinking about this time. So you want to keep your eyes constantly on this stuff. The next things that you want to do, and I'm going to take you through each of these, is you want to do a messaging and a positioning review of your business, okay? So a messaging review, what's this about? This is making sure that you're talking the language that resonates with your customers or meets them where they are with the conversations that they're having in their heads, okay? So I'm going to take you through an exercise that you can do now to do this. You also want to do a positioning review. This is about understanding where you're positioned in the market compared to your competitors and compared to where your audience is at. I'm also going to take you through this as well. In fact, we're going to go through this now. So your positioning review is going to basically determine how at risk you are. So Sam Walton can choose to not participate in a recession because his business is well suited in a recession. Others of us might not be so lucky. So here's the positioning review. You can use this to work out how at risk you are, and you can also use it to work out how to get out of at-risk situations. So if we go back to the HBR research paper by Quelch and Jocks, they broke this down as well as anyone I've seen do it. So we're just going to use their model here. It's fantastic. Okay. So they said every business's products or services can basically be categorized in one of four areas. Okay. Now you might have products or services that meet multiple of these areas. So in that case, then you're obviously going to be mindful of that. So as we're going through this, make sure that you're thinking, okay, where does our business sit? Now, you might not get all of this done as we're going through it because there's a lot of stuff here, so you might want to do it later. The replay of this is going to be available. You might want to turn this into an exercise that you do with your team over, a morning or whatever. That's totally cool. So every business's products or service can be categorized in one of four areas. Essentials. So essentials are necessary for survival. They're perceived as being central to well-being. This would be things like food, okay? Supermarket food specifically. We're not going to cut back. We might cut slightly back, but we're not going to cut out going to the supermarket, okay? It's going to have to get really bad before that happens, okay? So that's an example of essentials business. There's going to be essentials. By the way, all of these are as relevant for B2B as they are B2C. So if you're B2B, then your business, your offering fits in exactly the same categories here. I'm going to talk about a nuance for B2B at the end of this section though. The next category is treats. So treats are indulgences where you can sort of justify the immediate purchase. So they're things that you're going to buy sort of regardless. So however bad the economic situation gets, there's a little local restaurant near me called the Juice Smith, and I absolutely freaking love that place. It's like 50% of my heart is Juice Smith and 50% is my family. And then 50% is explosion. And well, anyway, it's a significant part of what I care about. The recession would have to get savage before I don't go to the Juice Smith for a treat on the weekend. Okay, so that's a justifiable purchase. It's an indulgence, but it's a justifiable one. The next category is postponables. So these are things which we either need or we want, but we can put them off for a later time. Okay, so holiday might be an example of a postponable. Right, we know that we need a holiday. We promised our family we'd get them a holiday, whatever, but maybe now wouldn't be the right time. Maybe we'll just see how things play out. This is something that we might put off to the future. That's postponables. And then the final category is expendables. These are perceived as unnecessary or unjustifiable. It's frivolous. It's we walked past the showroom and bought a grand piano, right, as an extreme example of an expendable, right? So those are the four categories, and all of our products and services are going to fit in those. And we also have to be mindful. Two things are going to happen, right? The first thing that might happen is that some things might shift categories. So getting your grass cut. This might go from something that felt essential during good times to actually something that might feel expendable. So it might go from something that you felt like, oh, this was absolutely, we have to do it. But then actually when we sit down and we do our budgeting at the end of the month, we go, okay, maybe some of these need to shift categories. Maybe we can't really justify doing this. Private schools, for example, some people who send their kids to private schools, or if things get really bad, then that goes from being an essential thing that they thought they needed to actually, do you know what, there are other options we could do with that cash, right? Childcare is often, something in that category. So things can move. The other thing that can happen is that in tough times, people can trade down a section. So whereas maybe a treat might be something like eating out, well, maybe rather than eating out, what people start to do instead is buy supermarket food that's a bit more indulgent. So rather than going out on a Friday night to a restaurant, we're going to save the cash. We're going to buy some nice food and a bottle of wine from the supermarket. So we trade down from treat section to essentials section. Okay, so the first thing that you want to do then is work out where your business sits in all of these. And of course, the aim of the game is to move yourself more towards the essentials section. So the further up towards the top of this group you are, the less at risk you are during a recession. Now, someone asked in advance about something like selling to the public sector in light of brutal budget cuts. Sorry, I don't remember your name. I didn't write it down. Now, without knowing the situation in more detail, this is an example. If a public sector organization has had its budget cut and it's outside of their control, the danger is it's very difficult to sell into a market that actually has no money, right? I learned that in my very first business, selling to musicians. I was like, wait, I am selling to people with no money. That is not a good plan. So given that, a pivot might be one option, okay? Pivoting to a different type of customer might be one way of doing that. And I'll give you an example later of a client that we helped pivot in this sort of area. The other thing, though, is whether you can get your service recategorized in this table. So if you're previously selling to a customer, at whether you're B2B, B2C, B2 public sector, whatever, if the thing that you're offering was previously categorized as expendable or postponable, what you want to do is see if you can nudge it, see if you can get yourself recategorized into a different space. Another company that messaged me beforehand, they said, I'm wondering if you might include some suggestions for businesses such as ours, and they sell ADHD coaching. So coaching for people who have ADHD, they sell this on an individual basis, which is absolutely fantastic and sounds like a really valuable thing. So they're a service business. They're focused on human well-being, growth, and change. Now, they said it's a temptation for people to walk away from these services in times of financial turmoil, thinking that they are optional or luxuries. Actually, the impact of greater self-awareness and learning new ways to approach life can be huge, affecting all the seemingly more essential things, such as job, income, financial security. They absolutely nailed it. So they actually answered their own question. And what's happened here is that they've been selling this ADHD coaching to people and presenting it or packaging it as an expendable or postponable. So if I've got ADHD and I might be searching for ADHD coaching, it may or may not be a high value, high perceived value thing for me. If I'm struggling to get a job or I'm struggling to hold down a job and I think that my ADHD might be contributing to that, well, that's going to elicit a whole different type of search, right? Might be searching for best jobs for people with ADHD or how ADHD job interview tips or stuff like that. So that then indicates that this is a more essential search for me. So if I'm the coaching firm, I'm looking at how I can reposition my service as well as market to people that are indicating this is a more essential thing. This is not an expendable thing. Does that make sense? So it might be that I'm combining my service with a recruitment consultant to give tips for people with ADHD on job recruitment. And I might create a course or I might create a coaching program for people who want to get into the job market or work their way up the job ladder or career ladder with ADHD. And there's going to be an ADHD component to that. There's going to be a recruitment or a careers training piece to that. And then I'm going to market that to people who are in the job hunt. Does that make sense? So this is about addressing where you're at and then recategorizing yourself, kind of forcing yourself into a different section of the customer's mind. So this is the first part of this. Now, in the downturn, the categories can shift. We've talked about that. So that's the first thing that we need to do. We need to do this sort of, this is a positioning review. We need to see where we're positioned in our customer's mind. The second part of this is a messaging review. So remember that if we're talking a language which is no longer resonating with our customers because they've got bigger things on their mind, our marketing's going to fall flat. You might have been running a successful ad campaign for years, and then you notice that your conversion rate is going down, your click-through rate's going down because you've changed nothing, but your customers, they're in a completely different place. So we need to address the messaging that we're using in our marketing. So just like with our positioning, your customers or your clients' customers, if you're B2B, will fit into 4 groups. Okay, so your customers will fit into these 4 groups. Now, again, you might have people in different parts of those groups. You might have some people in one group and some people in another group, or you might be all into one group. These 4 customer groups are broken down as follows. So you've got slam on the brakes. So these are people that are hit hardest in an economic downturn. They cut their spending dramatically. They tend to be the group that have the lowest income, because they have the smallest amount of disposable income, right? So they, if I've got absolutely no spare income, I'm not going on holiday. I'm slamming the brakes on my holiday because I just have no disposable income. You can't manufacture stuff out of thin air. So they tend to be the lowest income. Although you also do get some higher income people that are scared. Okay, so I live in Cobham in Surrey, and there's a few private estates around here with absolute bangers of houses, like super mansions. And there's a whole bunch of them that have gone up for quite significantly below market value in the last couple of months. And this looks to me like slam on the brakes responses from people that are high income, but have thought, actually, this mortgage payment, I could meet it when interest rates are like 0.25 or 0.5%. If interest rates are going to 6%, drop me out, mate. Right? So we need to think about, are our customers going to be in this slamming the brakes category? And if so, we need to tune our messaging to them. And I'll explain how we're going to tune our messaging to each of these groups in just a minute. The second category is pained but patient. So these are people that are more optimistic long term, but they're less confident in the short term. Okay, so long term, they know everything's going to be fine. They're not like, this is going to be awful forever. But right in this moment now, they're like, we should probably chill out a little bit. So they cut spending, but less aggressively than the first group. The third group is the comfortably well-offs. So they feel secure, they continue to consume, but they're a little more selective. Okay, we think about people making their decision to purchase emotionally and then justifying it with logic. Well, that logic threshold is just gone up. Okay, so we need to make a better argument for the purchase than we had to previously. So remember, as we're going through this, think about which of these customer groups you are selling to. And then the final group, they're the live for todays. So they carry on as usual. They're really unconcerned about all of this, like blah, 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 recession, blah, blah. They tend to be younger. They tend to be more carefree. They tend to be in Dubai posting photos on Instagram. Right? Lucky them. No kids, clearly. So which group do your customers fall into? And we're going to need to tune our marketing message depending on which of these groups we're talking to. So if you think, right, I'm going to be talking to my customers a slam on the brakes. This is my customer segment. Absolutely. These are the people I need to talk to. Well, don't panic. For example, you'll see budget supermarkets. They will be increasing their advertising during this time. And they're talking about cost savings to appeal to the people who are thinking relentlessly about cost savings. Marketers in this group know that their audience is squeezed and they align themselves to that squeeze. If your customers are thinking about pennies, you need to be talking about pennies, right? You need to be inside the conversation that they're having in their heads. If you're selling to the pained but patient group, like a mid-range supermarket, for example, they will start to emphasize affordable treats. So they'll be trying to catch people that previously would have gone out for dinner, and they'll be trying to get them to buy the affordable treats at the supermarket instead. So they're targeting the pain but patient, the people that they're optimistic long-term, maybe less confident short-term. They're going to cut spending, but less aggressively. The comfortably well-offs. These people, if you're marketing to comfortably well-offs, your message is actually going to stay very similar. So they're still making their decisions in the same way, but remember, their logic threshold for justifying the purchase has gone up. So you're going to need to make stronger arguments for purchase than you previously did, knowing that your customers are going to have a slightly elevated sense of doubt that needs to be overcome. They also might be conscious about appearing to be spending too conspicuously, right? So yeah, we need to think about that. We need to make sure our message is tuned today. Live for today. If you're marketing to that group, well, you're going to be advertising a message of escape, offering a break from the gloom and doom. You're not going to tone down the fun. You're going to be emphasizing the fact that, you deserve this. Come and play with us. Escape all the blah, blah, blah recession talk. Okay. So if you're selling B2B, same customer groups, the thing to be considering if you're B2B in this whole review, the positioning and the messaging review, is that you might not be selling to your contact. Okay. You might be giving a message to your contact, which they have to take upstairs to a decision maker. So you might be marketing through someone, and that your contact and your decision maker might be in different categories. So your contact and your decision maker might be in different categories. I'll give you an example. We work with some huge global brands. Our contacts at those global brands are often marketing managers. In this sort of time, they're thinking about their jobs. Okay, they're thinking about job security. Now, their superiors are thinking about finance. Their superiors are thinking about budget cuts. Okay, so Our contact is thinking about one thing, the real decision maker, the budget holder, is thinking about something else completely. So in that case, you need to be making arguments, you need to be making marketing messages that are easy for that person, your contact, to translate upstairs and doesn't get lost. Think of the Chinese whispers effect, okay? You need to have something that resonates with both of those groups, okay? So the framework is the same, but you have to be conscious of the different groups that you're talking to and the fact that you're actually selling to two separate customers who might respond differently to types of messaging and different types of positioning. Okay, let me know if this is all making sense. I've got a little message on my thing telling me that I've got low signal, so hopefully you can still hear me all right. Yeah, cool. Let's talk about some. Actually, let me know in the comments. I'm not gonna. We're running a little bit short on time, so I'm not gonna read them all out. But let us know in the comments, where do you think your customers are sitting? Are they slam on the brakes? Are they pain but patient? Are they comfortably well off? Or are they the live for today's? Okay, let's talk about where to trim and where to accelerate marketing budget, because this is an important, a really sort of important distinction to make. We don't want to go cut everything. We don't want to go plow on with everything. I've left that graph there to remind us that there are significant opportunities with marketing if we are conscious about them. So HBR noted in the Great Recession that direct marketing and digital ad spend increased as a proportion of total ad budget for these huge conglomerates compared to broadcast marketing like TV. So what you'll find in times like this is that businesses will, or the smart ones, will prioritize trackable channels and trackable offers over sort of broadcast brand advertising. Why? Precisely because they're trackable. If you're in a recession, if you're in a downturn and you have a limited amount to spend, you want to make sure that that money is going into stuff that you can tell exactly what you're getting out of it, right? You don't just want to be plowing it into a black hole. If you talk to a radio ad salesperson, their pitch is basically, people need to hear about you 7 times before they purchase anything. So, what's the impact going to be of my radio ad campaign? Well, it's going to be good. Look at all the people that do it. Yeah, but how do I know how good each ad is? Oh, no, don't think about that. It's all about the reps. It's all about the reps. The long and short of it is they can't track it. They don't know. They have no idea. That's the sort of stuff that gets wiped to the floor in a recession. So PPC channels can be great for this, as you see exactly what you're getting from them, right? You see exactly what you're getting and you can measure money in, money out. Here's an example of a client. We've been working with them for a couple of years. Now, they're in a really interesting space because whilst we weren't we were working with them during the recession in COVID, they sell basically an office product. So lockdown and post-lockdown was actually a recession in their space because all of a sudden people aren't thinking about office. The last thing you're wanting to spend more money on is your office, right? That's just not a thing. You're like, I've got this massive office space in central London or New York and all my people want to work from home and they're complaining because they want to work at home. So we had a really difficult time with this client trying to figure out, okay, how are we going to position you in this space where the thing that you sell is maybe not so needed? So what we had to do was move them categories, move them out of the expendables or the postponables and get them into the essentials. So what we did is we noticed that conversation had shifted. People were talking about things like hybrid working policies, which was a new concept. People were talking about smart offices and how they'd manage people coming in and going out and how we'd manage social distancing and all of that stuff. So what did we do? We took that business and we just inserted them into that conversation. We owned phrases like remote working policy or hybrid working policy, absolutely dominated for them. And because we did that, we were able to enter the conversation that these businesses were having and position this business as absolutely vital for companies that have to implement a hybrid working policy. As a result, they invested 74K with us on this work and built a 2.4 million pipeline out of it. Now, the other thing to know from this is that data. They have that data because they track their pipeline and we track the marketing. We're not putting this money into, hey, let's just dump some stuff on radio or TV and just see what happens. No, we're saying, let's put this stuff in content marketing, let's build content on the site, let's drive paid traffic to it, and let's measure what happens. So because you're doing that, you're able to be quite surgical about this and get some great results. The next thing to think about is building trust with educating versus just posting content. This is another thing. During the sort of fat, happy times, you'll see loads of businesses emulate sort of like HubSpot's content strategy, where they'll just post every topic that they can possibly think of, even if it has very sort of tenuous connection to their business. Whereas what we actually see being really effective here is educating people with purpose. So educating people about why, hybrid working policy and our client's thing makes a load of sense if you're implementing a hybrid working policy. Another reason why educating is really important is that in a downturn, people generally need more reassurance and they make decisions more slowly. So content marketing, publishing this sort of top of the funnel guides and stuff can be a great way to grow your traffic. And it works well in a downturn because you're then educating people and you're building trust with them. When people are moving through the consideration funnel more slowly and they need more reassurance, it's very reassuring if you've been helping them along that journey. So being every step of the journey with them is even more impactful than downturn. So educating through your content rather than just like, we're just going to post everything that we possibly can. An example of a business that we've worked with doing this is a company that, again, they had their own sort of, we did work with them, we still work with them, and we've worked with them over the lockdown and the subsequent recession, but their industry saw a massive sort of jolt, its own equivalent of a recession, because I'm not going to go into it, but basically something happened in their industry where competition was just blown wide open. They went from having a sort of a moat, as Warren Buffett would say, to being like, this is a total free-for-all, complete free-for-all. That's a really scary time for them, and it's a bit like a recession because they were used to just like, walking along, sweeping up all of the customers, and then all of a sudden there's like 15 other people all trying to sweep up the same customers. So by building out huge content sections and focusing on this education piece, we're able to grow this 8-figure business by, I think, 43% in the first year, something ludicrous like that. I'm remembering off the top of my head, but absolutely crazy growth for an 8-figure business. You might see that sort of thing in a much smaller company, but very dramatic for a larger company. And we did that through building rankings for phrases that people were searching which were educational. So building position 1 to 3 rankings from their ranking position 1 to 3 for 100 keywords, and we took them to 516 in a year. And page 1 rankings from 207 to 1355. So that's focusing on building out massive amounts of educational content with purpose, not just for the sake of it. Does this make sense? Cool. I know someone's asked me a question about B2B. All right, we'll come back to that in a minute. Other places to trim and where to accelerate, particularly where to accelerate. Every company should be really more focused than ever on maximizing revenue from existing traffic and existing audience. 2 main places that you're going to do this. Email marketing. Now, we have an incredible email marketing team here at Exposure Ninja, and it's the closest thing to a home run, a guaranteed home run that I've ever seen in digital marketing. When you've got a business that's got an email list, even if it's only relatively small, the chances are that business does not communicate to that email list as frequently as they could do. And if they do, they're not doing particularly good offers. They're not making a good job of this. Well, this is existing traffic, existing customer groups that you can make money from. And every time you send out an email, you will make money from them. So we've got this little secret hack in our email marketing team, which is that we send out emails to these customers groups. Secret hack, right? We just email them. So we have, like, whether it's setting out automations, and we've got videos on our YouTube channel about the different types of automations that we run and stuff, but whether it's setting out like automation sequences, indoctrination sequences, as we call them, or whether it's about having like sequences for checkout on basket abandonment or browser abandonment on e-commerce, just emailing your list with offers generates revenue. And it doesn't cost you anything to do this, which is why it's so important in this sort of time. So whether it's like adding a pop-up onto your site and getting more email subscribers than you used to, or whether it's just looking at your existing database and like, right, we're going to build some automations for them. It's an absolute no-brainer. Another area, there's an example of a business that we work with, ecom, great company, been doing email marketing, not particularly well, were able to generate a 24.8% conversion rate from their email marketing, right? 24.8% conversion rate is absolutely freaking crazy, okay? And by the way, I'm going to run a few minutes over, just to warn you. We're supposed to finish sort of in 2 minutes time. We're going to run over. I hope that's okay. If not, then this is recorded and you know it'll be live on the link. CRO, conversion rate optimization, another area. We talk about this loads on our YouTube channel and podcast. Generating more leads and sales from your existing traffic on your website, optimizing your site for conversions. We built a client a new site, increasing their conversion rate from 2.3% to 7.26%. Now, let's just think about this. 2.3% means you get 2.3 leads for every 100 visitors. 7.26 means you get 7.26 leads for every 100 visitors. That's obvious, but that's 3 times as many leads for the same traffic. Think about that ad chart, right? That CPC benchmarks. What you've basically done there with your cost per acquisition is you've divided it by 3. So if you divide your cost per acquisition by 3 by increasing your conversion rate, and you also find that your clicks are cheaper because your competitors are pulling out, you are, as we say in the industry, in the money. So this can be an incredibly effective thing to do, and it means that you don't have to invest anything more in traffic. That conversion rate is an increase. We actually also doubled their organic traffic in a year as well, but Philip, good question. We'll come back to that in just a second. So all I want to do, right, I'm just going to explain how Exposure Ninja can help. Hopefully this has been useful. I'm going to explain how Exposure Ninja can help. There's basically 2 ways that we can help, and then we're going to do some Q&A. So I can see there's a whole bunch of questions in here, which we're going to go through. I just need to talk about this stuff. Hannah C, glad you found it useful. Thank you for tuning in. Okay, the first way that we can help is through our marketing services. So we're a digital marketing agency. We do this stuff for clients. All of the case studies that you've seen today or you've heard about today, very briefly, Whistle Stop Tour, have been our teams doing this work. Now, we work with businesses of typically more than 500K revenue. Usually they're investing 1,500 to 30K a month with us. On a range of stuff. We help with competitor research. We help with branding and positioning if required. Oh, I didn't tell you about that. There's one other business I need to tell you about. About a pivot, because it was related to someone's question. So remind me. We help branding and positioning, and we help with various different digital marketing channels. We've got large SEO content marketing teams, pay-per-click teams across Facebook, Google Ads, Amazon, YouTube, email marketing teams, conversion rate optimization, web development, and consultancy for those services as well. Now, if you're interested in working with us or interested in talking to us about working with us, then you can fill in the form at exposure.ninja/recession. Exposure.ninja/recession. It's a very, very chill process. Don't worry. No one's going to close you. No one's going to cold call you and scam you into something. It's just completely chilled out. If we think that we're going to be a good fit for you, great, then we'll talk about that. If we're not, then that's totally cool. So if you're interested in that, go and fill out the form at exposure.ninja/recession. The other way that we can help you is we actually have a course called the Star Marketing System. You might not know about this course. We haven't promoted it very much. I recorded and planned and did the whole thing basically myself with the help of some of the ninjas as well. But the course is pure me. So if you're not fed up of hearing from me on YouTube and this type of thing, then you might enjoy this, because it's just basically a lot of me talking about marketing. But the Star System course is there's 5 elements to the STAR system. You may have heard us talk about it in the videos before. What we did is we break down the 5 elements of all successful digital marketing campaigns, and then we just teach you how to go through each one. So for people who can't yet justify the cost of Exposure Ninja, the STAR system course is perfect because it's designed to kind of get you there. Now, the other reason the STAR System course is perfect for businesses right now is because it focuses a lot on the sort of positioning side of things. So thinking about your branding, your reason for existing, and how you communicate that. So your messaging, the target audience that you're going after, defining a tone of voice which resonates with your customers, and then turning all of this into a compelling offering, which you can go to the market with. That's all covered in the first module. Then we've got stuff about your website. We've got stuff about conversion rate optimization, building a perfect call to action. We've got stuff about driving traffic from all of these different types of channels. And I interview some of the team at Exposure Ninja who work in these channels on a daily basis to get their top tips for driving traffic in SEO, PPC, content, email, conversion rate optimization, stuff like that. So you can go to the exposure.ninja/star. And quick tip, if you use the voucher code TIMSTAR, you get a whopping discount. I mean, whopping discount. So those are the 2 ways that we can help. Okay, now let's break for some Q&A. So before I do any of that, though, I wanted to give an example of a business that we helped reposition, and this was related to the kind of public sector question that we had earlier. So, in the early days of actually, I think just before lockdown happened, we signed a client who basically sells education resources. So they sell like teacher training equipment and materials to schools. So that was their business. If you want like lesson plans and stuff like that, then that's what they sell. So of course they want to grow, they want to expand, and then boom, lockdown. All the schools are closed, teachers are sent home. Problemo, because their target customer has just been told to go home and not do any work. So immediately panic stations, initial response, right, we just need to pull the brakes on this. We're not sure if we can even, continue. What we did is we helped them reposition. So we said, okay, just because the schools are closed doesn't necessarily mean that there's no need for education, because actually there's now a whole bunch of parents who are having to teach their kids. So that, I gather that when you've got a child, if they know maths but they don't do maths every like few days, then within a few weeks they're like subhuman, unable to do anything. They're unable to remember how to talk or even count, basically. My wife is an ex-primary school teacher. She said they basically had to reteach all the kids the basics after every summer holiday because they just forget it all. So they've now got all of these parents that need to teach their kids. So we just help them reposition the business. So instead of selling these training materials to the schools, right, we're just going to sell them to the parents because that's an essential for the parents. So whereas previously it was an expendable or postponable, as soon as COVID hit, that was definitely expendable for the teacher. We helped move it into essential for the parents, and it completely transformed the business. And they grew very quickly as a result. So that's an example of a pivot to a different audience in order to move up categories. Okay, questions. Someone said, where would you focus your efforts if you don't have existing traffic? Okay, this depends on your budget and your time available. So if you have very small budget and you have very small budget but you have time available, then you might want to look at free traffic sources. And by free, I'm putting those in inverted commas because no traffic source is free. But with, say, organic search, you don't have to pay anything. You just have to do a huge amount of work. So if I had no budget, I'm looking at organic search. I'm looking at building out content for the sorts of phrases that I think my market is going to be searching for in an economic downturn. If I've got some budget, then I'm looking at PPC to get things started. And then I'm looking to reinvest the profit from that in organic search. So I've got 2 traffic channels running simultaneously. Someone also said, as a white label digital agency, most of our clients are B2B. How do I make them aware that they actually need my service more than before recession? Okay, that's this question here. Okay, so we're just going to use the same model. So at the moment, we feel like we might be expendable or maybe postponable. What we need to do is we need to get people to think of us as essential. So if I'm selling to digital agencies, I might be emphasizing, say, that they can get me to do their service or my company to do their service rather than having to hire loads of people, which is going to be really high risk at a time when wages in the space are really high. You've got inflation, you've got cost of living, meaning that pay rises have to be huge. We've just rolled out massive pay rise across our company. So some agencies that are struggling financially won't be able to do that. They won't be able to compete. So they might be thinking about trimming headcount. So you might be going to them saying, I'm an alternative to having huge, massive amounts of staff, right? So you're turning yourself into an essential rather than expendable. Okay. Any other questions that we've got here? Brilliant stuff. Customers turned up. All right, okay. Yeah, go Angry Badger, go and serve that customer. Someone says, JC says, have you got any tips on adjusting messaging to be sensitive to people's current outlook in a doom and gloom risk reducing industry? I wouldn't want to be seen as adding to people's negative outlook. I completely feel you, Jay. I think what we've done today is my attempt at that, okay? So it's recognizing what people are thinking. You're not diminishing that. You're saying, look, I know this is a really scary time, but actually, can I show you a couple of things? I actually think there might be some opportunities here. So you're not making them wrong for feeling doom and gloom, but you are making them realize that actually, it doesn't have to be all doom and gloom. And that's the thing about this time. A lot of people, they just get carried along by the momentum of the media, the trending recession topic. And you might be the perfect opportunity to sort of break them out of that a little bit and say, do you know what, actually, come over here. I think I've got something to show you. This might not be all bad. I think if you do this, this, and this, look, actually, there's some opportunity here. So I think you don't want to go too heavy, like, right, if you're thinking doom and gloom, you're an absolute freaking loser. You need to just turn that frown upside down and just get on with it. This is going to be the greatest time in human history to be alive. You don't want to go too far that way because you're just going to turn people off. But you need to kind of, right, there's where you are. Yeah, let's lift you up a little bit. There we go. Off you go. So I think you can do this. Rush says, do you think snacks are something that could be essential in a recession? Snacks. Okay. It depends where you're positioned in the market, because there's essential snacks and there's completely expendable snacks. So it depends on your pricing, depends on how you're positioned. I would anticipate that things like, if I'm thinking about a particular niche, I might be thinking about, let's say, value-added snacks, like things with protein inserted, right? Well, if I'm a bodybuilder on a budget and I can get a protein snack that's got my 30 grams of protein and it's cheaper than a chicken breast, well, all of a sudden that looks like an essential to me, right? So I think it depends where you're positioned in the space, but there's absolutely no reason that snacks can't be essential, because they are food, right? So you're in the right sort of ballpark. It just depends on where you're sitting. Okay, Dale has tuned in on his annual leave. Naughty Dale, to say, has everyone requested a marketing review yet? The guy is relentless. Okay, so as well as the Exposure Ninja service and as well as the Star Marketing System course, of course, you should be requesting your free website and marketing review from the team here at exposureninja.com/review if you haven't already. Someone has asked, they sent me a private message. Yeah, okay, great. Cool. I'm actually late for a meeting now. Shocking. So I kind of need to go, really. If anybody has any final questions, let me know in the comments. Otherwise, thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. Don't forget, this is going to be an exciting time. If nothing else, it's going to be exciting, right? And I think it's okay to have, Mary says, some people say I'm over positive, rainbows and all that. I think this is the time when the optimists, we need to step forward. Not to be like naive or like rainbows and unicorns completely, but this is a time when we can pull up our co-workers, our customers, our teams, and our families sometimes. Like, they need a bit of optimism. Recession time, the sun still comes up. We still have beautiful days. We still have lovely moments with our family. The whole world isn't going to collapse. Yes, it's going to be a difficult time for some people, but it's not the end of the world. We will get through it. And if we're clever and we're strategic and we use a scalpel rather than a cleaver, actually, this can be a fantastic time of growth. So you absolutely have got this. You absolutely have got this. The fact that you come to a webinar about this sort of topic and you spend some time here listening to someone like me about this shows that you will win. You are in the right place to win. Thinking about this stuff, playing with the positioning and your messaging review shows that you're thinking about this. The great thing about this recession is it's happening quite slowly, okay? People have been predicting it really for sort of almost 3 years now. So we've had a lot of time to prepare. Some people are still panicking. They're still heads in the sand mode, or they're in full retreat mode. But we have the time to prepare and get ready and stress test our businesses. So yeah. One question from Chung Mary says, we're seeing huge sales drop in the last few months. What are your thoughts on marketing quality organic wine, but not luxury, in a recession? What I would think about is going back to that question of understanding who your target audience is and whether they might be pained but patient. If they're pained but patient, remember, they're going to be cutting back, being a little bit more careful in their spending. So we need to know what message is going to resonate with them, and whether it's going to be a case of, showing them that this is like restaurant quality, or, they're recreating a restaurant experience for lower cost at home. If they're comfortably well off, remember, we just need they've got a higher logical threshold than they used to. So we need to give more of an argument to get them to make that purchase, but we can basically use the same message. So I would play with those things. I would play with seeing which type of those audiences you've got and which way of adapting your message is going to resonate the most. Someone says, can you continue with PPC after recession, not spending all that money on radio? Yeah, you can absolutely continue with PPC after recession. Yeah, I think PPC is pretty much an all-weather channel. Now, of course, you need to be careful. You need to be making sure you're choosing the right channels for you. You need to make sure that you know your numbers. You know exactly how much you can afford to spend per acquisition, and then you're just using that. You know what your maximum cost per acquisition is for break-even profitability. You've set what you know based on the value of your back end, based on the value of your average customer. And then you're just watching the market and you're going, yeah, we can spend. Okay, right. Oh, okay, maximum cost per acquisition. We're exceeding that. So we're going to turn it down, or we're going to focus energy elsewhere. Okay, cool. Thank you so much, everyone. I will see you soon. If you want us to do more lives, then I think we might even be planning to do that. So great. Otherwise, have a fantastic weekend. Lots of love to you all. And go and request your free website and marketing review from exposureninja.com/review. TTFN.